Hello, Taurus, and welcome to your reading. This is Bright Soul Collective Tarot. My name is Laura, and these will be your intuitive insights and advice for the month of January 2023. This reading will be for Taurus, Sun, Moon, and Rising. So, by all means, if you know your three major placements, you can feel free to listen to any of the readings that apply, as each one may resonate for you differently. And do keep in mind, as always, these readings are general in nature. They're meant to apply to a more broad collective of individuals, so not everything that comes through will necessarily be for you. I highly recommend you take anything and everything that does make sense, however that might connect to your personal experience, whatever way that resonates for you, and you can simply leave the rest. So this will be for January 2023, but since I'm getting a late start, we're going to extend it for about 4 weeks into the beginning or first week of February 2023. And that'll give us a buffer, and that'll give me time to get some February readings prepared and posted for you guys after this is all done. So welcome, Taurus. Happy New Year. Happy 2023. If you are returning, I apologize. I've been a little bit MIA the remainder of 2022. The last few months, there was a lot going on. It was kind of rough. And I kind of had to pull back my energy and really just focus on myself and my family. I wasn't really able to do much in the way of energy work. It wouldn't have served anyone if I was showing up in that energy, but things are good now. I'm happy to be back here reading for you. And if you're new to my channel, welcome. Thank you for being here and sharing this time and space with me. I hope you guys are all doing well and that your new year is off to a great start. I'm super excited to get into your reading. I've got your oracle card. We'll get you just a couple of tarot cards. I'll share with you my channeled messages. So I took some time to sit down and connect with information before I got any cards out or began this reading. And then we will finish off with another oracle message and some affirmations. So to get started, I'll just let you know what I was picking up on as I was preparing for your reading. It was a really interesting sense of there being comfort in routine. So kind of just getting into a routine, either back to a routine or forming a routine, something that you can feel good about, something that feels solid and stable and safe. So particularly, I know like the holiday season, it can be a really busy kind of overwhelming time. Usually we've got a lot of demands on our time and attention. So sometimes we're removed from our, typical day to day. So it might be that you are returning to that or trying to kind of get back into a routine. But yeah, there's definitely a sense that that's something that's going to be helpful and beneficial for you, just to have that kind of structure, to know what it is that you want to accomplish. Especially if things have been a little bit, I don't want to say chaotic, but if things have been busy, and if they are still busy, perhaps having that kind of routine that you can feel good about is what's going to help you maintain your focus and not become distracted by all the other stuff that's going around. The other thing that it might be, I think it's like the routine it's kind of like a tool, because I kind of get the sense this month that it might be important for you to really focus on just doing one thing at a time. So you might find yourself being particularly reactive if there's a lot going on, there's a lot of noise, a lot of distractions, that kind of stuff. So to kind of help you maintain your focus, it's best just to tackle one thing at a time, kind of step by step. Give yourself the tools to be successful and to feel successful, even if it's just on a small scale. It's nothing huge. And then the other thing that I noticed was that I was actually kind of reflecting on just how calm and peaceful I felt while I was preparing for your reading. It was like this deep sense of inner calm. Like, I didn't feel agitated. I didn't feel anxious. And I can pick up on like anything, right? So sometimes when I'm preparing for readings, I'm not picking up on such a calm energy. And then as I was reflecting on how calm I felt, I kept on getting these little, like that tingle of excitement that you get in your like stomach or your solar plexus when you're looking forward to something, or, it's the idea of like, maybe there's something exciting. It was a sense of like opportunity. So I didn't necessarily get the impression that it's something like solid that you can count on. And maybe that's why it's just these little bubbles of excitement that are rising to the surface, or like heart skipping a beat, right? So maybe there's something in particular that is on the horizon that could be an exciting opportunity, and maybe hasn't quite come to fruition, or you're not quite sure about. So you're not getting your hopes too high and you're not getting too wound up about it, but there is still that little bit of excitement that comes up whenever you think about it. So that could be validating if you've got, something that you're working toward, a project on the go, a new opportunity of some sort on the horizon, new relationship, whatever that might be. So yeah, it was kind of nice. It was kind of nice to have that little bit of excitement in the midst of the calm. And there was definitely a sense of like potential. So there's no guarantee, and there's a sense of peace around that, but also this kind of, there's the potential for something new, something big, something exciting, maybe even just something small and enjoyable. So that was kind of fun. And then we'll get into your oracle card. So your card for this month is flexible. And it's actually kind of interesting because flexible is the card that came out for Capricorn. So we're currently in Capricorn season as I'm recording this, up until the 20th of January. And Capricorn is an earth sign, just like you are Taurus. So naturally, you feel a little bit more connected to and at home in the energy of the other elements during their season, and you're able, specifically in Capricorn season, to tap a little bit more into the qualities, the strengths of the Capricorn energy. So I thought that was kind of interesting. I'll be interested to see if something similar comes out for Virgo. But nonetheless, this is a month for you to, I don't want to say like focus on being flexible, but it might just be keeping flexibility in mind, perhaps embracing it. So if it's a concept that is a little bit foreign to you and perhaps is not something that you've ever thought much about, it might be worth taking a little bit of a dive into the concept this month and seeing how you might connect with and embody that energy and what it might have to offer you, because it is being highlighted as a theme. So that might mean that if it's not something that you're particularly open to and you don't really lean into it, you might find yourself in situations where you're being asked to kind of have a more open-minded and flexible approach. It might be triggering for you. So there is the opportunity to practice that, or there is the opportunity to be challenged by that energy. And at any time when we're challenged by those energies, we can kind of stop and reassess and change our approach, right? So even if you start off being a little bit triggered and then you realize, oh wait, hey, like maybe flexibility, maybe this is a situation where I need to be more flexible, you have the freedom to be able to do that, and the choice is yours. So there is that kind of little bit of empowerment there for you. But the beautiful thing about flexibility is that it's about being flexible, being open-minded, being, adaptable, willing to learn, being teachable, and being willing to compromise without giving up on, what's most important to you. So the example is like a tree. So a tree is firmly rooted, just like you should be firmly rooted in, your identity, your confidence, your belief in yourself, your values, your non-negotiables, that kind of stuff. So those are your roots, and that's kind of that core, those core values that you hold on to, that may not necessarily change, or they may change with time, but not from external forces, essentially. And the rest of the tree is basically exposed to the elements, but it's able to bend and flex. And just because it's able to bend and flex, for example, with the wind, doesn't mean that it won't break, right? But it means that flexibility gives you the opportunity to withstand and experience more than if you were just rigid without breaking. So sometimes we can be in a rigid frame of mind. There may be like an expectation or a need to be right or to have things done a certain way. And when we cling to that rigidity, which quite often comes from a place of like preserving our own interests and like our comfort, because the unknown is, sometimes scary or overwhelming, that rigidity actually makes us more susceptible to breaking. Because if we can't flex with the wind, then, you know, we're going to inevitably break, right? We don't have any room for error. We don't have any room to sway. And so this is basically saying like rigidity is, and like a need to kind of control or to be right is probably something that you will be challenged to let go of this month, because there's going to be a lot to experience, a lot to explore, and potentially a lot to learn about being flexible and realizing that even in relationships and interactions, you can compromise and meet someone halfway or find a way to open to other people, other viewpoints, other ways of doing things, and still have your needs met. So you can still have your needs met without a my way or the highway, or a control. I need to kind of control and observe in your approach. And so that once you start to experience that and see that to be true, it can be not only a really validating thing, but it can feel really good to know that you can trust yourself to be able to kind of, keep your roots firmly planted, stand up for the things, like not changing the core of who you are, not getting lost or swept up or uprooted by anything that's going on around you, but being able to flow with it, right? You can flow with it, you can learn, you can adapt, you can use that information to do things differently, because you don't necessarily know. You might have an idea of what you feel to be the right way, or what you think might be the most beneficial way to have something happen. And the beautiful thing about being flexible is that may be the idea that you're attached to, but if you allow yourself to connect with other people and other experiences, you might be surprised to find an even better way that suits you even better, that you never would have imagined, on your own. So it's kind of like the world has a lot to show you, and letting go of rigidity and expectations is going to be really, really beneficial. And that applies in all aspects. This applies to your approach to yourself, any personal development or healing that you're doing. This applies in the workplace, on your career path, your approach to finances, your approach to family and relationships, all of that kind of stuff. So it's saying like you don't have to be threatened by other other viewpoints, maybe even things that oppose you. It doesn't have to be a threat, because if you trust yourself to remain firmly planted and you allow yourself to bend without breaking, you can experience a lot more connection and a lot more harmony, but also it can facilitate a lot more opportunities. Like, if you're a good student, you can learn a lot more and you'll connect with a lot more opportunities to move ahead, as opposed to being somebody who's kind of rigid and stuck in their ways and not necessarily interested in adapting, right? So it's like we don't want to adapt to the point where we lose ourselves, but we also don't want to be so rigid that we're not open to anything but our own kind of lens, like our own lens of experience that's being that we're viewing any given situation through. So that's really lovely. This is also saying, like, in terms of flexibility, it's important not to get ahead of yourself in terms of making assumptions or even like judging a book by its cover, because even if you know exactly what you want and exactly how you want to get there, you still have to be flexible in terms of how that can play out, because it's great to have those desires, but we're not necessarily in control of all of the things that need to happen in order to facilitate that, working out in the exact way that we desire. So it's okay to have a very specific goal and very specific steps that you want to take so that you can ensure you're doing your part to move forward. But it's also important to be flexible to, what the universe throws our way, the people that we're working with, and to be open to new ways of doing things and new doors that might open, even if we hadn't anticipated that would be a part of the journey or the path. So it's like you can't necessarily write someone or something off as being irrelevant or unimportant if you haven't taken the time to examine what they might have to offer, how that perspective might impact your approach and if there might be anything beneficial there. So it's kind of like you don't have to change your approach, but at the very least being open to and willing to kind of consider it, you can make a more informed decision for yourself, right? So I think that's really a lovely sentiment. And it's also 1 and 9 is 10, so it's a card of endings. So it may be associated with some kind of ending, maybe letting go something from the past, maybe something that's been limiting. And I feel like, especially if you're somebody who has, if you struggle with limiting beliefs and self-sabotage, and you have really high expectations of yourself, and you give yourself a really kind of rigid box to exist within and work within, this flexibility might be something that is really freeing and really empowering for you on that note in terms of personal healing and development, because in doing so, you might feel a little bit more free to just be yourself, right? You can kind of drop the expectations and just kind of flow with things a little bit more naturally, giving yourself the opportunity to experience new things. That can do wonders for our mental and emotional health and well-being as well. So don't be afraid to try something new. Okay, so we're getting 2 cards for you. So the first card is going to represent your challenge for this month, something that might be difficult or might be coming up to be kind of worked through and cleared. And then your second card is going to be the advice as to how to move through that energy. Okay, so your advice is the 6 of Pentacles, and then we have the 6 of Cups at the bottom of the deck. So the first thing that came through, when I saw specifically the 6 of Cups at the bottom of the deck, which is a lot of times it's a card of reflecting, kind of looking back on the past relationships, those memories. Sometimes it can be reflecting on memories that have impacted us emotionally in a challenging way. Sometimes it's those warm, fuzzy memories and nostalgia. Kind of taking a look back at what you've experienced, what has impacted you in a meaningful way, how that has shaped you and influenced you, and where you're at now as a result, right? So it can be a card of... The challenge with this kind of energy is that in looking back at the past and acknowledging what we've experienced, sometimes we can fixate really heavily, which makes me think of like Cancer energy. Like sometimes we can become so fixated on the things that have happened to us in the past that we almost relive them or allow them to limit us, right? So we bind ourselves to something that happened to us in the past, and we don't necessarily allow ourselves to move forward from that energy with the experience or the wisdom that afforded us, right? So it's like you could look back, right? This guy with his dog could look back on the past when he was little and the dog was a baby and wish to return to the past. Like, those were the good old days. I was young and carefree. My puppy was little. Now I'm older. I've seen a lot. I've experienced a lot. There have been challenges. My dog is older. If you're a pet owner, inevitably our minds will intrusively wander to like the inevitability that we will lose our pet at some times. I don't want to be morbid, but this could be the kind of energy that you're in, is like looking at where you're at now, maybe projecting yourself into a future that feels a little bit scary or uncomfortable, and then kind of projecting back into the past when things were seemingly better or easier, or perhaps when things weren't, all sunshine and rainbows. And the important part of this energy is to acknowledge and to honor our past and the experiences that we've had. And if we're taking the time to look back and to be nostalgic and to remember, so it can be a card of, connecting with those beautiful memories, but it can also be a card of like potentially even reliving trauma. which gives us the opportunity, like if we're doing healing work and we're working through something that's happening to us, inevitably it kind of has to resurface, and we have to acknowledge what we experienced and what we felt, for better or for worse, in order to kind of process and move through that, which is a really taxing process if you are going through something like that. But the thing that came up for me specifically was, if you are looking back on your past, for example, your childhood, maybe your familial relationships, maybe relationships with friends, maybe relationships with your family members or your parents, right? It's recognizing that although things happened a certain way, or people treated you a certain way, or certain decisions were made on your behalf, which potentially created challenges for you, it doesn't mean that you have to be bound to repeat that forever. Right? Because the thing is, when we're children, inevitably things will happen to us. We don't have the autonomy to make our own decisions, and we are going to be impacted by the people around us, and sometimes not for the better. So it's kind of like a card of acknowledgement, but also release, and saying like, yes, this happened to me, but I have the choice to recognize that it happened. And I have the choice to say like, this isn't what I would have chosen for myself. This isn't what I want to carry forward. And doing the work to process and to move in a different direction. And that may require therapy. If it's something really major, I don't want to gloss over it. I don't want to diminish anyone's pain or struggle. I don't want to glaze over or oversimplify anything to do with life challenges and trauma and all of that. So you'll know what's right for you in that given circumstance. But I think it's important to say that if you have been thinking a lot about the past, revisiting the past and past experiences, it's kind of like the past, we can't return to it, right? So if we're going to take that time to return to the past and we're going to acknowledge what happened to us, we might as well do so from a kind and loving place where we are willing to say, maybe this happened. Maybe this wasn't healthy. Maybe this isn't what I want for myself now. I've been paying the consequences of whatever that is. And then asking yourself, like, what do you want to carry forward, right? So just because it happened in your past doesn't mean you have to force yourself to hold on to it and relive it every day. Which we can get caught in a cycle of pain when we've experienced those kinds of difficult things. And it's important to see that, because you are in this position of autonomy, hopefully for yourself, that you get to decide what's important to you and what you want to value. And it doesn't diminish what has happened in the past. And like I said, if there's therapy and healing to be done, that's something that only you will know. But it's kind of the general vibe is, not letting yourself be defined by your past, and recognizing that even as we sit here speaking, you are always changing, right? You're always changing, you're always growing. And the things that happen to us in life, for better or for worse, inevitably are going to impact us and change us. And at the end of the day, we're not responsible for what has happened to us, but we are responsible for, how we respond to it. And what we decide to do moving forward, right? So we can decide to empower ourselves and take it upon ourselves to move away from the things that we know don't work for us, or we can force ourselves to relive the same pain over and over again. And I don't want to oversimplify that either, because sometimes that's not a conscious decision, but you may have been reflecting a lot on the past. There may be a lot of emotions related to the past coming up. So that's just something. Usually I don't expand so much on the bottom of the deck, but I feel like that's something that's important to say. And maybe that's where flexibility also comes in, being flexible with yourself and different iterations of yourself, different decisions that you've made over the course of your lifetime and in the past, and, not looking back and, beating up on yourself or judging yourself for being a certain way or making a certain decision, and trusting that the only place that you have action, that you can take action, is right now. And at any time you can decide to make a change. So I will say that your challenge is showing up as the Nine of Swords. So this could be, yeah, like a lot of torment, like feeling kind of tormented, feeling anxious, having a lot of difficult thoughts and feelings, because this is a lot of mental energy, right? Quite often it's a card associated with like a lack of sleep or insomnia or nightmares, like kind of either an inability to sleep or sleep that is not restful, right? Perhaps because you've got a lot on your mind and there's a lot of stuff weighing on you. But the beautiful thing about the Nine of Swords is that although we've got like all of these, you see there's all these dark crows here, and it's like this could be, you know, negative outlooks, negative perspectives, limiting beliefs, you know, things that are hurtful or challenging that kind of drag you down. But among all of these thoughts, all of this noise that might be in your head, there's this one white one here. And the way that I've always interpreted this card is that this one white bird here, that's kind of the truth, right? That's your truth. That's who you are. That's what's important to you. That's your personal light, your empowerment. And this is what you have to sift through all that noise to find. So it's trusting that, like, especially when we're anxious and we've been through a lot, we can't necessarily take all of the the thoughts and the resulting feelings that come up as a result of our minds kind of getting away from us in anxious times. We can't take that for truth. You know, we can't take that as representative of who we are or our self-worth. And we can't, you know, we shouldn't project that into the future, right? Because especially if it's stuff that we're worried about or fears that we're worried about, the more fixated we are and the more that we allow that to impact how we feel about ourselves and the world, the more likely we're going to be inspired to take action in a fearful manner, which essentially kind of brings us closer to that fear coming true. So it can be a self-fulfilling prophecy. So you may struggle with anxious thoughts. You may have a lot of difficult kind of thoughts mulling around that you know not to be true. You know that they're not serving you. You know that they're not healthy, but maybe it has something to do with the way you were raised or your programming, or just, you know, it could be a depression and anxiety. So you might be in the process of trying to sift through, right? Trying to identify like what the source of that kind of misinformation is, right? And getting to a point where you can cut it out. And usually it's focusing on this one thing that you know to be true, the thing that's kind of uplifting and empowering to you, that you're going to focus on and you can use as your kind of base to bring you back down. But yeah, so you might, I almost want to say like you might be feeling paralyzed when it comes to making decisions or, you know, setting goals or dreams or wanting to work towards something, because your fears kind of get triggered and then your mind gets away from you and you kind of go down the rabbit hole of all of the reasons why it won't work or all of the possible things that could go wrong. Even if you know that those things are not necessarily likely, and even if you don't like the way those thoughts make you feel, sometimes it ends up triggering us and, you know, the brain kind of takes over. It can be a habitual response that's unconscious. So that might be something that you're struggling with. And then for the Six of Pentacles to show up as your advice to work through this energy, I really love that this has come through, not only because it's Pentacles, which is your suit, that's your skill set, right? The world of the the material, the practical, you know, taking action and influencing your external environment. But the thing that's great about the Six of Pentacles is that it's all about giving and receiving, like the exchange of energy. And when we talk about energy in this sense, a lot of times it has to do with something material. So it could be offering help and support to someone and knowing that that will eventually come back to you. It could be, you know, sharing what abundance you have, right? Because in order to get more, you have to be willing to give. Right? And so it's trusting that what you're putting out there, what you have to offer is valuable. It can support people. You don't need to hold on to it. You don't need to be fearful that you're going to lose it. You don't need to worry about if other people are going to receive it. It's about, you know, kind of following your path, putting the work in, sharing what you've got, moving towards what it is that inspires you, taking that consistent action each and every day, and trusting that that's going to impact your life as it's meant to, and that it'll come back to you in one way or another, right? So no matter what we put out, it's kind of karmic, right? It comes back to us. So if you're focused on finances, I would say don't worry too much about finances, not in the sense of being reckless or, you know, irresponsible with money, but don't worry about where you're at or that you'll never get ahead kind of thing. Because this is saying, like, as long as you're willing to kind of invest, you're open to receiving that back. But you have to give a little to get a little. You have to spend money to make money is always the thing that comes up with this card. But this is also a card of abundance, recognizing the abundance that we have, being able to appreciate it, even if we don't have everything that we want, and even if we don't consider ourselves to be extremely wealthy, and even if it's beyond just material forms of abundance, and it's more into like time and energy, it's recognizing that that's kind of a currency that we share, right? And that abundance comes in all forms, and the more able we are to recognize the abundance that we have, whether we've reached our end goal or not, the more appreciation we have for it, and the more willing we are to share that with people. Because when you're in an abundance mindset, you're not worried about loss. You're not worried about not connecting with more in the future. You're focused on what you have and how that is satisfying, how that's helpful and beneficial to you. And it makes it a lot easier to want to share and help others. And doing so from that place, that energy comes back to you. And of course, you're not doing it so that it will come back to you, right? The intention is appreciating the abundance that you have and being willing to honor that and share that with others. And that might be the energy that you need to experience to help kind of ease some of your fears or whatever is causing this doubt, this kind of restless, sleepless energy. And the other thing that I will say is that with it being the Six of Pentacles, I think that kind of follows really nicely with what I was saying about there being comfort and routine and kind of having a standard structure, right? So if you are somebody who needs that structure, you need to kind of have an idea of what your day is going to look like and what you need to get done and how you might do it in order to feel ready to take on the day. That could be really good, right, for you in a practical sense, because you are a master of the practical and that's where you're most effective. So if that's a tool that's going to help you. And the great thing is that you can have a plan or a structure in place to give you like a framework to work off of as you are trying to be more flexible, right? Because this is also flexibility here. And so you don't have to stick to that exact plan, but it gives you something to work off of. And then you can kind of deviate a little bit. You can find out, where you have room to rearrange, or maybe if you've got space to add something different in, or maybe take something off your plate to take on something different. And even just doing the things that are on your list, but perhaps doing them in a way that is not what you were normally accustomed to, like doing something a different way. But yeah, so I think it is a very practical approach. It is a very hands-on kind of solid material approach to managing this. And so I think the other thing that I will say before we move on is that with this being that more practical hands-on energy, which is your strength, it's like using your strengths to help you work through the challenges that maybe you're not as comfortable with, right? So which could be this mental energy, this anxiety, these fears or limiting beliefs. And so sometimes just focusing on taking the next step, taking action, so doing and not thinking, you might have a struggle with that. So if you've got this kind of internal noise going on that potentially disrupts you or takes you off track, that can prevent you from acting. That can prevent you from taking steps in a tangible way in the real world, which will ultimately kind of slow your progress in terms of getting to your end goal or a manifestation. And perhaps this has something to do with how you were raised or how you feel about yourself as a result of past experiences or relationships. And so, yeah, your power is kind of in the present and taking action in spite of what you think, right? And sometimes that can be a really good way to interrupt those harmful thoughts or those disruptive thoughts, is to just kind of get into your body, get out of your head, and just move, take action. It could be like completing a task, you know. If you're doubting your ability to paint a masterpiece, it's just painting anyways and not thinking, right? So, and it can also be the benefit of like taking care of your health, moving your body, getting into your body, doing breath work, right? Reconnecting with and grounding yourself. That's something that's always going to be important for you as earth signs because you are of the earth. So grounding yourself and grounding your energy, getting into your body and experiencing that those tangible sensations. It's going to help you balance out this challenging energy as you work to find your kind of true north in the midst of this kind of internal chaos. So I'm going to share with you the channeled messages that I got before we started. So the first one that came through was forging ahead, and I got the vision of this like knight in armor on a horse, like kind of charging through battle in like a sea of opposition, right? And the thing that I kind of noted and felt was that this knight was not actively on the offense, right? Was not actively chasing after or trying to take down and engage other people. The goal was more moving ahead, getting through the crowd, and any action that was taken was more defensive than offensive. It would technically be offensive because you're moving forward, but it wasn't for the sake of taking down other people. It was more about getting to the end goal. And so that could be something that's helpful for you. So not fighting other people, but just kind of defending your peace, defending your vision, and making sure you're taking those consistent steps to move forward. And so this could also be in relation to this energy, right? So it's like forging ahead. You don't have to be chasing after anyone or fighting with anyone. You don't have to be proving all of these thoughts wrong, but it's kind of like holding your ground, holding your vision, and still taking action, because perhaps in doing so, that will give you a little bit more clarity. And if you don't allow your fears to limit you in the actions that you're taking, perhaps you'll have the opportunity to see that those fears, were kind of unreasonable all along. And if you hadn't forged through and done what you did to get to where you are, you would still be in that place of committing yourself to something that isn't serving you, right? Yeah, so that was interesting. And the next thing that came through was interrupted consciousness. And so as I sat with this idea of interrupted consciousness, it made me think of like, if you are somebody who's trying to be more conscious, like if you're trying to be more consciously aware of, the way you think, the way you feel, the way you act, maybe your habits, your triggers, right? The things that are kind of unconscious that usually we don't think about. If you're trying to become more aware of those things to make them more conscious, and this specifically could pertain to personal development or like healing things from your past, it's not to beat up on yourself if you only have brief moments of clarity, right? So it's like you might find yourself coming to realizations and being like, oh, that's why I do things the way that I do. Or you're reflecting on an experience and you realize, wow, this person said that to me, and that's why I've got a complex and I can't accept criticism or whatever. So it's like you might have these moments of clarity and understanding where the pieces are coming together and the unconscious is being made conscious. And then you might kind of lose your footing, right? You might lose your focus. You might kind of forget. Or when you try to integrate that and move forward and do things differently, you might still find yourself succumbing to your habitual responses, or you might forget that you had that kind of moment of clarity. And so I would say, like, don't beat up on yourself because you're a good student. This is kind of the nature of becoming more conscious. It doesn't all happen all at once because, that would be overwhelming. We need time to integrate these things. And quite often at the beginning, we only do get like little brief glimpses. It's hard to be fully conscious of everything all the time. And so it's a practice, it's a skill to be built. It's kind of like a muscle that needs to be strengthened. So it's something that's going to take time. And just because it can be discouraging to like have those moments of clarity and be like, this is what I need to do and I'm going to do it. And then you maybe lose that and then you reconnect with it a little bit later down the road. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're doing anything wrong. If anything, it just means like you're on the right path, you're connecting with that clarity. And this is just a muscle that you have to allow yourself the time and space to continue working. So taking time to ground yourself and maybe taking time to meditate and reflect, allowing yourself that kind of quiet inner space to reflect is what's going to help. It may help you in terms of connecting to that consciousness a little bit more easily, but it's also about like not beating up on yourself if you feel like you're not doing a good enough job, because it's not a race, that you need to win. This is just, your progression through your own experiences. So yeah, it's just a part of the process. So with that being said, I'm going to get you a final oracle message. We'll see what might be I just got a whole pile flipped over, so I'm just going to keep shuffling until I get one specific message for you all. So this will be an additional bit of advice, perhaps clarity, however it resonates for you is what is meant to be. Well, there must be a very specific message in here for you guys. Oh, as I say that, here we go. So get grounded. Empaths, highly sensitives, connect with nature, which is funny because like, what was I just saying? Grounding yourself is going to be important. Meditation. So yeah, this might be something that's really helpful, especially as you are trying to kind of maintain your roots, but also become more flexible. So I'm just going to find it here in the guidebook and I'll read it directly for you. Okay, sorry, this is taking a minute. Okay. So get grounded. Empaths, highly sensitives, connect with nature. You are being called to get grounded, to ensure that your luminous field is clear and your inner well is full. If you're not grounded, it is all too easy to get swept up in other people's energy and mistake it for your own. Your boundaries will become blurred as you are absorbing the energies around you and struggling to define what is their stuff and what is yours. If you pulled this card, you are very likely an empath or a highly sensitive person and need time alone to fill up your well, balance your energy, and get grounded. There are two types of people: those who draw their energy from others and those who draw their energy from within. Reflect on which one you are and carve out time each day to ensure your well is being replenished. Being sensitive is a superpower, but like all powers, it needs to be nurtured in order to be fulfilled. It's easy to get swept up in the high frequency energies that are swirling around the planet. The quickest and most effective way of clearing all of this from your field is to ground yourself by connecting with Mother Earth. There are many ways to get grounded. One of the most powerful ones is to practice earthing by connecting to the power of Mother Earth. Spend time in nature, put your hands on a tree, your palms are extensions of your heart chakra, or walk barefoot on the earth. And then the Work Your Light action says, do something to get grounded and connect with the earth, which I think is really valuable because you are an earth sign. Yeah, and so that kind of gives a little bit of extra insight even on this. So whatever this challenging kind of mental activity, it might be overwhelm or self-doubt or, things that are kind of uncomfortable. If you're a sensitive person and you're sensitive to the needs of people around you, it's very likely that a lot of that noise is not really your own. It could be stuff that's been projected onto you. It could be stuff that you have been raised to believe or to value. So this grounding and meditation might also, and this could go hand in hand with this Pentacles energy here. That's also why it's important to be flexible, right? Because just because it's in our awareness and just because we've picked it up and we're experiencing it doesn't mean that it's ours or that it's beneficial for us. And if we relegate ourselves and we rigidly expect that we are just going to have to operate based on like what we've been told, we're not really giving ourselves the opportunity to accept that, hey, maybe that's potentially harmful. Maybe it doesn't align. Maybe there's a better way for me that I can give myself the opportunity to discover. So yeah, when you take some time to ground, you might realize that a lot of the stuff that's causing you trouble is not really your own. And you don't necessarily have any business carrying it. And maybe you didn't realize that it was impacting you. And once it's made conscious, then you can decide if it's something that you want to continue carrying or if there's something else that might be better in its place. Okay, so we're going to get to a couple of affirmations. Here I was thinking this was going to be a shorter reading, but I don't know, you guys have me a little scattered. Okay, so these affirmations might be helpful for you this month. So it might be helpful for you now or as you move through the month. Obsessing over the outcome of a relationship gets in the way. Instead, I let go and allow. So it's kind of like not overthinking, getting too far ahead of yourself, but letting yourself move through situations more naturally, not needing to control and seeing where that's going to take you, right? And that's also about being flexible. And then I make decisions from a place of intuition and power, right? And so I think intuition and power is really what this white bird symbolizes to me. So instead of making it from a place of fear or anxiety or lack, it's from your own inner knowing of what's best for you. But it does usually take some time connecting with yourself, quieting down and disconnecting from all the noise outside of you to be able to recognize and connect that. So grounding might help you do that this month. So Taurus, that's your reading. I'm going to leave it here. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, the best way to support me is to like this video on YouTube, leave me a comment, let me know what you think or how it resonated. And beyond that, you can recommend or pass my readings on to anyone that you think might be interested. If you haven't already, you can check out my channel at Bright Soul Collective Tarot and take a look at my other videos. And if you haven't already, you can also subscribe to my channel. That's a great way to support me. And ensure that you click the little bell icon so you are signed up for notifications, and that will keep you up to date on new readings as they're posted. So Taurus, I hope this was helpful for you. I'm so happy to be here. It was a pleasure reading for you, and I cannot wait to reconnect with you in the future and read for you again. And in the meantime, I'm wishing you all the very best.